And I found this interesting because I just didn't think about it, that the widow or widower are likely to think they're cheating on their deceased spouse.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for joining us on Second Act TV. Today, I'm so happy to introduce a new content expert to Second Act, life and dating coach, and the host of Choose Congruency Podcast, Kathleen Pickrel. Kathleen, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Silke. It's so nice to be with you.
Well, Kathleen, I'm really happy to have you here because you speak to a topic that's so important at this point in life. You help people who have had a major life event happen, get them through it, get them to start over again, such as the loss of a spouse, a big topic here. In fact, we have a whole playlist on that. And something that you're all too familiar with. You lost your spouse and had to start over again. You went through the online dating process and found somebody else. So, you are the perfect person to talk to about this topic. What I do want to do a little different today is that instead of focusing strictly on the person starting over, the widow or widower, what about the people dating and choosing to date a widow or widower? There's a lot of stuff, challenges that come up that they need to be aware of. So what I'd like to do, I put together an outline here of stuff that other experts have recommended that I thought, were good points, and I want to get your input on that. One of the first things they say is to assess the circumstances of the death. What do they mean by that?
Yes, and I think that's really important because how their loved one passed away really will impact their healing process and their journey forward. So, let's say that their loved one passed from a longer term illness, maybe a year or two. And so that person may or may not, it's also individual, but they may or may not have had some time to actually process and anticipate the death and think about what life moving forward would mean. Of course, that doesn't mean when that person passed away that they're ready to necessarily jump into dating. Okay. But they may be a little more clued into what they want life to look like moving forward versus someone who maybe passed away in an accident or that kind of thing where it's very sudden and all of a sudden the whole world just changed in the blink of an eye. Now everything's different. And then, of course, if someone passed away from suicide, that they have a whole nother layer to deal with and process and go through, and it can even lead to complicated grief because it can be so difficult. So really kind of knowing how that person passed away in their life can, help you to know what they're dealing with and maybe where they are.
Yeah. What's important about this conversation too, it's not just understanding for those of us, I actually did date a widower briefly, but to understand all this, but also for people who have lost a spouse to hear this. They may not understand what their potential new partner or date is dealing with. So this is a good conversation. So once you have a better idea of the circumstances, there are some red flags to look for, whether or not this person is in fact ready to date. Talk to me about that.
Right. Yes. And, I was thinking about the term red flag, and because to me, red flag kind of means like warning, 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 this just isn't going to work, like dating scams and those kinds of things. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, but what it can mean is it's time for some open communication. And so one of those either red flags or it's time to talk scenarios is when the widow or widower continually talks about we, but not meaning you, meaning we, my late husband and I, and that's going on a lot. And you're noticing that. And of course, feelings within you are like, well, wait a minute, aren't we a we? And so it's time to have a talk about what that means. And really important, communication and communication well is vital when you're, in any relationship really, but in these really sensitive type issues. So as the person who is dating the widow or widower, you want to kind of start with the I statements, we call them. So
Okay.
I'm noticing that you're, referring to we and it's not we,
Okay.
or I'm feeling this way. And it's so important that you do this, that you actually communicate and share your feelings, because if you don't, they're going to build up. And someday they're going to come out and not the way you want. And so if there's a potential for the relationship to move forward, you want to express your feelings, especially about the we, to that person where they will be able to receive it. And I know your friend Jean in one of your previous episodes talked about this. She wasn't even aware of it. So because it was brought up, she's like, oh yeah. But it was brought up in a way that she could hear it. So that's really important. Another red flag, or it's time to talk, period, is if the widow or widower is not introducing you to friends and family. Like they won't do it. Now, a couple things about that. It's important for the person dating the widow or widower to understand how difficult this is. It is so difficult. From a personal experience, I remember when my partner is now Dave, and we were dating, and I decided, okay, this person is now going to be in my life and we are going to be moving forward together. So now I must tell people. And that was when I told my kids, they're adult children, but when I had to tell them, I was terrified, because what are they going to say? What are they going to think? Are they going to think that I'm trying to replace their father? Are they going to judge me? All those things. And with, telling my in-laws, telling my mom, who loved Terry, my late husband, it was really, really hard. So as the person dating somebody, it's important to know how difficult it is. But as the widow too, that's when I knew I was able to move forward, because I was willing to go through the pain and feelings to actually do it.
Yeah, the communication on both of the examples you just gave would be so difficult for me. I know that. I tend to let things build up because I would have trouble addressing this. This is so good to know.
And so this isn't for everyone. Definitely. You have to, kind of gauge yourself as you're going along. How is this making me feel? Am I able to do this as the person who's dating the widow or widower? And there's no judgment there if it's not for you. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, it's not, I'm not saying it's not for me. I'm saying it would just be really difficult.
Right.
Yes.
And it's individual too. I mean, Dave, my partner, he dated a couple of widows before me, and it didn't go so well for him either. He, one woman he dated, he thought things were going along fine, and then the anniversary of her husband passing came around, and she realized, that I can't do this. And
well, yeah, you brought us to a point that's coming up here, and that is one thing to know. And I found this interesting because I just didn't think about it. That the widow or widower are likely to think they're cheating on their deceased spouse.
Absolutely. So many feelings, come up when a woman or a man starts to think about dating again. And this is why it's also important not to rush for both parties. It's important for the widow or widower, and also for the person dating. That widow or widower is probably on a huge roller coaster of emotions, up and down, up and down. And one of those really strong feelings can be that feeling that you're cheating on your late spouse. Because really think about it. So with a divorce, right, you may be having some animosity or some negative feelings. There's a reason you got divorced. But when your spouse dies, presuming it was a good relationship, they're not all, but presuming it was a good relationship, you have those loving feelings and you feel still connected and you still feel married. And so that can take a long time to kind of process through and negotiate with yourself. And then guilt is the other big one. Guilt around maybe even wanting to date. What right do I have to think about dating again. Who am and the feelings that brings up of wanting, the idea that you want to move forward, to many of us kind of says, oh, well, did I really love my partner? Did I love them enough? And of course, those are things we make up in our mind, and there's no truth to that we didn't love them enough, or we didn't love, it's just you're moving on into a different chapter of life. But the guilt and the feeling like you're cheating can be really huge things that you have to get over.
Yeah.
Or move through, really. You don't really get over, you just kind of move through.
And one of the things that this can also bring up is that whole issue of idolizing your spouse. That, if you can't move on, that you're always going to be in competition with this person, but you're not, right?
Right. And I think it's really important for the widow or widower to really pay attention to this, because it is so easy to idolize someone who's not with you anymore, someone who's not with you day to day. You remember all the great things about them, all the wonderful qualities they had, but it's so easy to kind of forget the day-to-day annoyances that, their little habits that you didn't like, or all the little things that bothered you. And so you have them up here on this pedestal, like they're this, great, I'm sure they were a great person, but, we're human. And then you have the new person in your life that's, interested in you and dating you, but they're human and you're dealing with them on a day-to-day basis. So they are going to annoy you. You're going to get mad at them, all of those things. So it's important as the widow or widower to keep that in mind. Oh, am I doing that? Oh, am I doing that? And is that fair? And then the person, who's dating them, they need to be able, this is where that communication is so vital. Yeah. They have to be able to share with you, the widow or widower, how they feel, or that this is happening. And so communicating well and in a way that can be heard by the other person, there's a lot to it.
Well, we get a lot of comments. Some people will say, "Oh, I would never date a widow or a widower, because of this." And others are, "No, that's like the best, because they understand what a relationship is all about, what a happy relationship is." Mm-hmm. So that's why I think this is, so incredibly important. I want to bring up one more point before we get to some good stuff here, mm-hmm. and that is the memorabilia and pictures. Again, as a person dating a widow or widower, be prepared to see a lot of memories and understand that it's not a competition, right?
Right. And I can imagine how difficult that would be for the person dating, the person who's had the loss, to walk in maybe to someone's home and see all these pictures and again, that am I competing with this? This is very difficult. So I can understand how difficult that would be, especially in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But as the relationship goes along, then, this is where that could be a red flag or a time for communication about things aren't changing at all. And I feel like there's no room for me. And if you're dating someone and having sex with them, don't have a picture of your late spouse next to the bed, please.
Oh, God, no, right? I'm laughing, but that's yeah.
But it happens. It does happen. So don't do that.
Yeah. Well, and what I like here is they write that there's signs that confirm or indicate that a widow or widower is in fact ready to date again. And one of those, which you just mentioned, that they have stopped living in the past, that they are able to get rid of, or certainly put aside some of the things that visually lock them into their past life. What do you say to that?
Yes, right. So the items are not taking center stage anymore. There's actually space. And I like to think of your life is like a book, right, with chapters. And, each chapter comes along, and now you're at this chapter in your life. So you don't forget all the other chapters, right? Whether you're reading a book or writing a book, you take you with it through to the next chapter. But is there space to write the next chapter, the new chapter, or are you just going to rewrite the old chapter?
Mm-hmm. And they say here also, if the person is pursuing you actively, that they keep initiating, another date, or moving the relationship along, that certainly is a green flag. That
right. Yes.
this
Thank
may be
goodness for
going.
those green flags.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I agree. Yes. When I felt like I was ready to date again, I was looking forward to the next date. I was planning it. I was, making that a part of my life. So I am now dating in my life, and I am liking it, and I am happy when I'm with the person that I'm with. So yeah, definitely that they're interested in moving forward.
Yeah, and they can see a future with you. That's the other point that I thought was really
Yeah.
important. That when you do talk, you're talking as a new we versus.
Yes, exactly. There's the we. And that's how, like I said before, when I decided that I would tell people that we were in a relationship, that's how I knew we were a we, and I wanted us to move forward and have a real future, because I wouldn't have done it otherwise, because it's too painful.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, defining the relationship. You're comfortable in defining the relationship. We're making it sound like a lot of work and difficult, and it doesn't it doesn't need to be if you're aware of this, right?
Exactly. Really, the key is, we're going back to communication. However, it doesn't have to be like these big sit downs. We're going to have this huge thing and make it a big deal. Really, more importantly, as things come up, as you notice things, as you wonder about things, or little things come up, if you can just talk about it in the moment. And really, that's true in really any relationship. It's just a little more heightened in this one.
Right. Kathleen, we're coming to the end here. I'm going to link to all your information to your website should people want to get in touch with you directly on this. Again, I get tons of comments on this, and I'm happy to refer people to you, somebody that can really understand this. Before we close out, is there anything else you want to add that I didn't ask, or that you think is important for this segment?
And the only thing I want to say really is don't limit your options. Don't prejudge that this is or this isn't for me, because, honestly, as we get older, more and more people are going to be widows, and we're all different, just like anybody else. So don't limit your options. That's really all I have to say.
Kathleen, thank you again, and I look forward to having you back soon on Second Act TV.
Thank you so much, Silka. It's been a pleasure.
If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button is right over here. Just click on through to YouTube, and when you see the little bell right next to the subscribe button, hit that too. We'll notify you every time we launch a new video. See you next time.